Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
This is the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
God, I love this place.
Back in 2019, they put out the biggest movie of all time.
Is it the biggest movie of all time?
Yeah.
It is?
Yep.
Wow.
At least it was until Avatar got re-released again.
I got this.
But the point is, they were on top of the world.
Nothing will change that. What have I to fear?
Fast forward to 2023, with the release of The Marvels being their lowest grossing movie of all time.
What the?
The MCU is now quite literally at an all-time low. But why?
Why is Gamora?
What is causing the MCU to not be the same as it was? I believe it all started here. WandaVision 2021.
We are an unusual couple, you know?
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
You see, up until this point, Marvel had always maintained a limit when it came to their output. For context, we gotta go back to the beginning of the MCU.
When do we start? We just did.
From 2008 to 2012, Marvel released 6 movies across 5 years, averaging just above 1 movie per year.
Takes us a while to get any traction, I'll give you that one.
From 2013 to 2016, Marvel maintained a steady stream of 2 movies every 12 months.
Keep it simple.
Before finally raising that number to 3 movies a year at the end of the Infinity Saga in 2017, 18, and 19.
Did it work?
And I gotta say, for the most part, this worked for the MCU.
I think it worked.
And that's when we arrive here, 2021, the start of Phase 4 and the new saga for the MCU. And guess what they did?
They surrendered?
Not exactly.
In 2021 alone, Marvel put out 4 movies: Black Widow,
Enough.
Shang-Chi,
Who are you?
Eternals,
IKEA.
and Spider-Man No Way Home.
Hello, Peter.
Already more than they had ever done during the Infinity Saga. But on top of that, they decided it would be smart
I am smart.
to put out 5 Disney Plus shows: WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, and Hawkeye.
Should we be worried?
No, it's nothing.
Each show consisting of, on average, 6 episodes at about 45 minutes per episode. So if we do the math,
You're great at geometry. You could do geometry.
about 4.5 hours per show. That's double the length of a standard MCU film. That means the 5 shows were essentially equivalent to 10 full Marvel-length films,
I'm so confused.
in addition to the 4 movies they released in theaters that year.
An exponential increase in energy output.
Meaning Marvel, in 1 calendar year, put out the equivalent of roughly 14 entire movies.
Not a great plan.
And when you start putting out that much quantity, it causes some problems.
Rosie, our new friend thinks I'm gonna blow up the city.
First of all, it just becomes a lot harder for audiences to keep up with.
Wait, who are you?
Now, I've heard a lot of people say that the MCU now requires you to do homework, where it never used to feel like that. But I would push back on that. The MCU has always required you to do homework. Before going to watch Captain America: Civil War, you were expected to have at least kept up with most of the previous Marvel films.
I could do this all day.
Most people understood that they should have probably seen the majority of Marvel movies before going to watch Endgame.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
So the concept of homework is nothing new for the MCU, but when the MCU was a 2 or 3 time a year event, it was a lot more reasonable for audiences to keep up with.
Who's Scott?
Ant-Man.
There's an Ant-Man and a Spider-Man?
And while keeping up with this insane amount of content might not be difficult for you because you're a Marvel nerd,
He's also a huge dork. Chicks dig that.
for casual audiences, this is way too much.
Yeah. What? How? Why?
And the casual audiences are important because when Marvel movies were making billions of dollars, that didn't come from just hardcore fans. In order for the MCU to be the biggest thing in the world, it needed to be something that was accessible to the more general audiences. And even just speaking from personal experience, I know so many people in my life that watched the entire Infinity Saga from Iron Man
I am Iron Man.
to Endgame,
I am Iron Man.
and then sometime during Phase 4 and 5, they just stopped watching.
Okay, that's enough.
Often because it was just too much,
It's been a little much.
but also because they thought it kind of sucked.
I think it's good, except it sucks.
It's no secret that one of the reasons Marvel is struggling is their quality has taken a dip. And this is coming from someone who enjoyed a lot of the stuff in Phase 4 and 5 more than most people. Like guys, Doctor Strange 2 was not that bad. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was not that bad. Quantumania, no, actually that one was pretty bad. But even I'll admit that Marvel's consistency is not what it used to be. Projects like Quantumania, Thor Love and Thunder, and Secret Invasion just feel like misfires that we're not used to seeing from the MCU.
This usually works.
All performance issues.
The more projects that you try to make all at once, the less time and attention you have to focus on making each individual project great.
Marvel's a great example of that. They had not been in the TV business at any significant level. Not only did they increase their movie output, but they ended up making a number of television series. And frankly, it diluted focus and attention.
Like for Kevin Feige, the man who's been the one constant steady hand across all of these different Marvel projects.
He's the only common denominator across all of these films.
There's just no way that he's able to oversee everything going on at Marvel the way he used to when they were only pumping out 2 or 3 things a year.
I used to know everything. Then I come back 5 years later and now I know nothing.
And that's a shame, because I think almost all Marvel fans would agree we want quality more than quantity. The perfect example of this is Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy.
And here we go.
The first movie, Batman Begins, came out in 2005.
I'm Batman.
We waited 3 years for the sequel, The Dark Knight.
Kill the Batman.
And then another 4 years for the conclusion to the trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises.
The time of his death, 8 years ago.
But it was worth it. That entire trilogy has stood the test of time and is remembered, with the middle chapter, The Dark Knight, still being viewed as the greatest superhero movie of all time.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
I can't imagine that people are going to be firing up episodes of Secret Invasion 15 years from now.
Not even your unusually attractive aunt?
No.
But, despite everything I've just said, I actually don't think either of these are the biggest problem the MCU has.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
No, I'm being serious.
I believe the area where Marvel is struggling the most is when it comes to the big picture of the MCU.
Gotta keep the big picture in mind.
Let me explain.
I'm listening.
Throughout the Infinity Saga, Marvel always had a strong, overarching narrative that provided a sense of direction with a clear end goal.
That up there, that's the Endgame.
In Phase 1, that was putting the Avengers together.
What if I told you we were putting a team together?
And even though half of the movies in Phase 1, like The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor, got somewhat mixed reviews, that didn't stop Phase 1 from being a very successful launchpad for the MCU.
Yeah, I can fly.
Why? Because the overarching story of seeing the Avengers assemble was just so exciting.
I just get excited and stuff.
And as soon as the Avengers came together, Marvel immediately, and I mean immediately, like in the post-credit scene of the first Avengers film, they established the next long-term target for this universe.
Tell me his name again.
A big purple nutsack, Thanos. And so all throughout Phase 2 and Phase 3, excitement for the MCU only grew larger as we got closer and closer to the inevitable conclusion of Infinity War and Endgame.
I am inevitable.
But ever since then, Marvel has completely lost this. Now we just have a bunch of disconnected, separate stories that as a whole aren't really going anywhere.
I'm not proud of this.
And it makes sense. When you're trying to put out such a high volume of quantity, it becomes nearly impossible for everything to stay focused and moving in the same direction. There's simply too much going on to somehow connect everything.
The world's a big place. Let's start making it smaller.
People are still enjoying certain individual projects like Spider-Man No Way Home,
This feels amazing.
Guardians Volume 3,
I'm done running.
and more recently, people are pretty excited for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Marvel Jesus.
But when it comes to the overarching story of the MCU, and where all of these projects are building up to, it just feels aimless and lacks the narrative momentum that powered the Infinity Saga.
How are you guys planning on beating that?
We still get projects here and there that push the Multiverse Saga plot forward,
We are currently in the midst of the Multiverse Saga.
like Multiverse of Madness, where we hear about incursions, Quantumania, where we got to see Kang,
I am Kang!
and the Loki TV show that deals with the multiverse and different timelines. But those are far and few between, and now feel like the exception rather than the norm. And this lack of focus doesn't just apply to the MCU's grand story. It's also affecting the characters.
I didn't say anything.
In Marvel's bid to put out more quantity, they've essentially forced themselves to spread the focus onto more and more characters. I mean, it was inevitable. When you're making 7 or 8 different projects a year, you eventually exhaust all of your A-tier characters.
We're a team.
Oh, no, we're not a team.
We're not a team.
And are forced to scrape further down the bottom of the barrel to find more characters to make more shows about. And that's why we're now in a position where Agatha is getting her own show.
Why would you think that?
Vision is getting his own show.
Because you are.
Not only are fans not excited about this, but it also means that we're spending such little time with each individual character, even their biggest current stars. We are 22 projects deep into the multiverse saga, and we've seen Doctor Strange twice.
Ow.
Wanda, twice.
That doesn't seem fair.
Thor, we've seen once. And Spider-Man, the biggest Marvel character of all time, once.
You're a very difficult person to contact, Spider-Man.
This is the exact opposite of what they did so well in the Infinity Saga, where they focused on a small group of characters that we got to see frequently and then became highly invested in.
We'll lose. Then we'll do that together too.
This is how often we got to see our main characters through 22 projects of the Infinity Saga. I'm not going to be counting minor cameos like Tony in The Incredible Hulk. Iron Man first showed up in the first... Iron Man, before returning for Iron Man 2, not playing so well with others in the Avengers.
I don't play well with others.
Which was followed by appearances in Iron Man 3, Avengers Age of Ultron, Captain America Civil War, a smaller role in Spider-Man Homecoming, before finishing off with Infinity War and Endgame. A whopping 9 appearances. For his friend that he always got along with so well, Steve Rogers,
big man in a suit of armor. Take that away, what are you?
He was in Captain America 1, Avengers 1, Captain America 2, Avengers 2, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame.
That is America's ass.
7 appearances. The God of Thunder first appeared in Thor,
This drink, I like it.
followed by The Avengers, The Dark World, Age of Ultron, Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame.
Just let me do something good, something right.
Black Widow, and this one really surprised me, in spite of not having a solo film during the Infinity Saga, also appeared 7 times. In Iron Man 2, The Avengers, The Winter Soldier, Age of Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame.
Let me go.
We first saw Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk, before he returned with a new face in The Avengers. Age of Ultron took on a supporting role in Ragnarok, and was back together with the team for Infinity War and Endgame.
I know, it's crazy. I'm wearing shirts now.
And lastly, even Hawkeye, the least prominent of the original 6, still showed up quite frequently, appearing in Avengers 1 and 2, Civil War. He did skip out on Infinity War, but then returned for Endgame.
I'm starting to think we mean different people here, Natasha.
This was a huge reason we were so invested and cared so much about these characters. And not only did we see the characters often, but they saw each other a lot. Which brings me to my final reason why I just don't think the MCU is the same anymore. They're missing the Avengers.
We're the Avengers, man.
Let me ask you a question. What was the longest we ever went without the Avengers coming together in the Infinity Saga?
8 years, 7 months, and 6 days, give or take.
Well, let's take a look. The MCU started off with 5 movies. Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, before the Avengers assembled for the first time. Following that, we had 4 movies: Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, before the Avengers reconnected in Age of Ultron. Then we had 1 movie, Ant-Man, before the next big Avengers crossover in Civil War. And I know Civil War was a Captain America film, not an Avengers film, but basically all the Avengers were there except for Thor and Hulk, so shut up. Next, we once again had 5 movies: Doctor Strange, Guardians 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ragnarok, and Black Panther, before we got Avengers Infinity War.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, I'm using your made-up names. Then I am Spider-Man.
Then 2 movies, Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel, before the story came to its end with Avengers Endgame. So throughout the entire Infinity Saga, The longest we ever went without the Avengers coming together was 5 movies. I don't think many people realize just how important that was to the success of the MCU. The Avengers crossovers were like the glue that held this universe together and stopped it from feeling, well, how it feels now. Directionless and disconnected. Our heroes would go off on their own solo adventures, but there was always a team-up film around the corner to pull these separate, drifting storylines back together, maintaining narrative momentum and keeping the MCU as a whole ridiculously exciting.
Very exciting.
But now, we are 22 projects into this new saga without a single Avengers film, and it doesn't look like we'll be getting one until Avengers 5 or 6 come out several years from now. And look, I understand why they got rid of the Avengers film.
When we were doing phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, there were less projects over more years. And it felt appropriate at that point that after every 2 or 3 years that it took for a phase, we would do an Avengers film.
When you're trying to put out 1 million projects a year, it becomes virtually impossible to try to coordinate an Avengers film in the midst of all of them.
As 4, 5, and 6 were coming together, there are more projects in less years, and that Avengers films really should be the capper to a saga.
But having all the Avengers come together only at the end of the saga isn't a good idea. Because remember, the reason a film like Endgame works so well is because of the relationships between our heroes that had already been built up through past team-up films.
I said we'd lose. You said, we'll do that together too.
If everyone was meeting each other for the first time in Infinity War and Endgame,
Who the hell are you guys?
then I don't think it would have been the satisfying conclusion that it was. So all of this begs the question, how can Marvel save itself? Can the MCU even still be saved? Well, those are topics for another video, and when I make those, I'm sure that I'll link them somewhere around here. But until then, to make sure you don't miss out on them when they drop,